Hello, and we have now travelled to the good old US of A. As you can see from the thumbnail, it's a little bit different, and if you're wondering what the car was, if you don't know what it was, it's actually a very, very important car, whether you're American or British. So keep watching and we'll tell you what that was. But first, we come back to the question we asked in the very, very, very first episode of this series. What is a Kitcar? There's a very good reason for asking that, because if you go back to the very, very, very beginning, there were plans to build a car as early as the late 1890s. But was that really a car, a kit, or was it just a set of plans? You see, what defines a kit car? Is it a set of bits that you buy to build a car? In which case, do you also include toy cars, small cars, kids' cars, or does it have to be for adults? This is very pertinent when you're talking about the pioneers of the American kit car. Oh, watch this next clip, and that will kind of explain what I'm talking about. America's first kit car wasn't even designed for adults at all. Meet the lad's car. Before Tesla, before Ford's Model T, there was the lad's car, a quirky, forgotten chapter in automotive history and quite possibly America's first kit car. Sold between 1912 and 1914 by the Niagara Motor Company, the lad's car wasn't just a vehicle, it was a DIY revolution. For the considerable sum at the time of $140, anyone could purchase the lad's car as a kit, shipped straight to your doorstep, long before Amazon was even a twinkle in Jeff Bezos' eye. The advert says it all. Send 20 cents today for a booklet telling how to build this automobile, complete with instructions and descriptions of parts and sizes, illustrated with diagrams, blueprints, cuts made from photographs, and price list of parts. There's a special inducement to the first boy in your town from the Niagara Motor Corporation, Department A, Niagara Falls, New York. Who could resist? It came with all the parts needed to assemble your own vehicle at home. Or, for an extra $20, you could skip the wrenching and buy it fully assembled for $160. At a time when Ford's Model T was dominating headlines, the lad's car offered something completely different. It wasn't built for speed or power. It was about mobility and independence, especially for the lad in your family and aspiring tinkerers who wanted a taste of the future. Sadly, not many survive to this day, but those that do are true collector's items. I mean, this is going right back to the birth of the motor car, and also almost certainly the first child's car. I mean, we're talking about something akin to the modern tot rod or cycle cars that are popular today. But these were way back in the early days of motoring, a true classic by anyone's standards. Let's go back even further, because some would argue the idea of a kit car wasn't born in America at all. In 1896, British designer Thomas Hyler White created what's believed to be the first car designed for home assembly, decades before the Niagara Motor Company gave it the American spin. However, Thomas Hyler White's car was altogether different because it wasn't such a commercial project. It was a set of plans, and you had to build everything Engine block, suspension, you had to make the lot. So to call it a kit car in the modern sense is probably a little bit misleading. But if you want to be really pedantic about it, that was the first home assembly car. I'm not sure how many people actually built them, but it was certainly available in principle. But in the US, it was the lad's car that appeared first. Its compact size, because it was designed for lads, supposed ease of assembly, and compared with a fully built car, a budget-friendly price, made it one of the earliest examples of democratizing the automobile, especially from a lad's perspective. I think it's also a sign of the time that it was called the lad's car. What about the lasses? Never mind. Sorry, girls. Back to the doll's house, by all accounts. Yes, it certainly was a different era back then. From a historian's point of view, the lad's car paved the way for today's kit car culture. From dune buggies to custom builds, theoretically it all started with the home-built lad's car. Though production ended in 1914, the legacy of the lad's car lives on in every garage, every wrench, and every weekend project across America, because sometimes the first car that drives us is the one we built ourselves. So, American cars are all big. They're all powerful with big V8s, and they don't do small cars, right? After World War II, America was booming. Big cars, big dreams, but not everyone could afford a shiny new Ford or Chevrolet. Enter the King Midget, a tiny car you could build yourself for just a few $100s. The King Midget story begins in Athens, Ohio, with two Civil Air Patrol pilots, Claude Dry and Dale Orcutt. Inspired by the lightweight design principles of aircraft, they dreamed of creating an affordable car for the average American. In 1946, they founded Midget Motors, setting out to deliver exactly that: a small, simple, and most importantly, cheap vehicle. The first King Midget was a single-seat kit. Sold through tiny classified ads in magazines, price tag just $270. For $350, you could get a fully assembled car, a fraction of the cost of traditional automobiles. Although, to be fair, it was a fraction of the size too. Fuel efficient and simple to maintain, the King Midget was the perfect car for post-war America's thrifty spirit. Marketing directly to the public, Midget Motors used clever ads that promised economy, ease, and the pride of building something with your own two hands. In an age before Amazon, these kits were ordered by mail and assembled right at home. It wasn't just a car, it was a project, an accomplishment. As interest grew, so did the car. In 1957, the King Midget Model 3 debuted, now with room for 2 passengers, a sturdier frame, and even hydraulic brakes. It still retained its charm, minimalistic design, easy maintenance, and endless character. Midget Motors rolled along into the late 1960s, but eventually the rise of more sophisticated, affordable small cars squeezed them out. Production ended, but the King Midget's legend lives on. Today, the International King Midget Car Club keeps the quirky spirit alive, preserving and restoring these miniature marvels for future generations. The King Midget wasn't alone. Post-war America saw a wave of simple build-it-yourself vehicles. Midget Motors even offered a supercycle scooter, quoted as lightweight, affordable and easy to operate. Most early kit cars focused on minimalism, often relying on small engines and even one-wheel drive setups. They weren't about speed, they were about freedom. In a world dominated by mass production, the King Midget stands as a reminder of a different American dream. One you could build yourself, one small piece at a time. In the golden age of American car culture, innovation was the name of the game, and few cars captured that spirit like the Woodhill Wildfire. Built between 1952 and 1958 in Downey, California, the Wildfire wasn't just another sports car. It was the brainchild of Blanchard Robert Woody Woodhill, a Dodge and Willis dealer with a vision for something revolutionary. And revolutionary it was. The Woodhill Wildfire holds the distinction of being one of the first complete fiberglass cars ever available. It featured a sleek, lightweight body crafted by Glasspar, a company that helped pioneer fiberglass manufacturing. Buyers could order a finished car or, for the DIY enthusiast, purchase a kit and build one themselves. Only about 15 factory-built Wildfires ever rolled off the line, with an additional 285 sold as kits. Today, these cars are rare treasures of automotive history. Under the hood, the Wildfire packed power, courtesy of Willis Engineering, and could reach a top speed of 120 miles per hour. Designed by the talented Bill Tritt, the car's smooth aerodynamic lines and two-seater layout made it a true American sports car icon. And for the younger speed demons, Woodhill even offered a child's version called the Bushfire, a mini Wildfire for the next generation of car lovers. The legend of the Wildfire continues to burn bright. In 2012, a rare factory-built model was featured on the Discovery Channel's hit show Fast and Loud. One of just 9 known to exist, it sold for an incredible $100,500, a deal sweetened by a 1934 $500 bill thrown in for good measure. Today, the Woodhill Wildfire stands as a testament to a time of bold ideas, fearless craftsmanship, and the American dream on 4 wheels. Right, so we're still with the early pioneers, and let's face it, kit cars are all about speed, right? In the golden age of American car culture, a quiet revolution was brewing. Not in Detroit, but in the hands of a visionary named Jim Kellison. His dream? To craft a sleek, high-performance sports car that enthusiasts could build themselves. Welcome to the story of Kellison Engineering and the fiberglass marvels that challenged automotive norms. Jim Kellison, a former US Air Force pilot, combined his passion for aviation with automotive design. Inspired by the aerodynamic lines of jet aircraft, he envisaged cars that were not only fast, but also accessible to the average enthusiast. Between 1958 and 1964, Callison introduced the J series: J1, J2, J3, J4, J5 and J6. Each model featured a lightweight fiberglass body designed to fit various chassis and accommodate different performance needs. The J4 in particular stood out with its 39-inch roofline and aggressive stance. The J4R was Callison's answer to the racing world, with a specially designed box tube chassis by Chuck Manning and the ability to house powerful V8 engines. Some J4Rs reportedly reached speeds over 200 miles an hour at Bonneville. These cars weren't just for show, these were built to compete. Callison's business model empowered enthusiasts to build their dream cars by offering kits that included the fiberglass body and necessary components. Builders could use donor cars parts from vehicles like Corvettes. This DIY approach made high-performance sports cars more attainable. Though Callison Engineering ceased operations in the 1970s, its influence persists. The company's emphasis on lightweight design, aerodynamics and user assembly paved the way for future kit car manufacturers. Today, restored Callison models are cherished by collectors and automotive historians alike. Jim Callison's legacy is a testament to innovation, passion, and the spirit of DIY automotive culture. His fiberglass creations not only challenged the status quo, but also inspired generations of car enthusiasts to dream big and build even bigger. Right, thank you for watching, and don't forget to click on the like. That really does help. We've had an awful lot of interest in this series, and thank you so much to everybody. We've had loads of subscribers, and that means a lot. We've had an awful lot of interest, an awful lot of people watching the whole thing, and if you're interested in the history, and we are going to respond to the feedback, and we've had a lot of feedback, and we are going to make more of this series, I promise. So keep on giving us a thumbs up, because that tells people like us that there's something that is worth watching. I mean, he did it last time, and 3 of his mates logged on. But also click on the bell and click on all. It doesn't cost you a penny, but oh my goodness, it makes a big difference to us. And thank you to all of those that did. Now, at the moment, we are trying to get my father's scimitar rebuilt. We've got somebody willing to do the work, but we need to raise the funds. You can help a little bit by helping us by going into the description. We have links for Buy Me a Coffee, where you can drop me a couple of quid to buy myself a drink to keep going, and you could also join us on Patreon, and Patreon is where you'll see the next few episodes of this program before they go public. If that isn't incentive enough, I don't know what is. But please, if nothing else, click on the bell, click on all. That doesn't cost you a penny, and it really does help the channel. Anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. And make sure you do tune in next time, because it's a cracker.